No, that's what I love about the concept for your podcast. You know, when you came to me with the idea and the samples, it's like, this isn't something that, we've done anything like this. It's a deeper dive into some really great topics or conversation points. Now that I've heard, kind of like 3 or 4 of them that you've recorded, it's been really great. Like, I find myself really intently listening to him because there's so much information in there that we can bring into our world as outdoorsmen, sportsmen, houndsmen. It's just a different level. So, I mean, what was it that drove you to really you sought us out to bring this podcast, and, it's been a little bit of a process and getting things lined out, but it was your idea, and I was super excited when I saw your email come in, and I listened to that first one, and I'm like, man, this is going to be something cool. I don't know if it's going to be for everybody, but there is definitely a group of people out there that I feel are really going to relate to this, and they're going to just, I don't know, like, we're all thriving or starving for information. When you're constantly trying to gain that knowledge, you pack a lot of it into some of these episodes.
Yeah, man. I really hope that people do get something from it. I enjoy conversational podcasts, and I think it's incredible podcasts are the new medium, or there's many new mediums arising, and podcasts are an incredible one. I used to be a huge reader, for school and also outside of school, and I don't know if I barely pick up the book anymore. I read for research and things like that. But there's just so much information out there on the internet and so many ways to digest it I really like to be busy. And, while I'm working on the truck or driving and looking for tracks, I can be listening to podcasts. It's amazing. I think that I felt that there was a hole in the hunting. I'm fallen deep into the dogs over the last few years, and I'm still a newbie, but I felt that there was so that's why I'm attracted to W and producing this sort of hound related podcast and hound related content with branches out into other subjects. But I think that there's a hole in sort of there's lots of conversational podcasts, but something I really liked about first of all, you guys are Western focused, which distinguishes you from the other hound podcasts to me. And I'm really mostly interested in Western hunting. I get a little bit from the other stuff, but it's primarily that. But the density that you get in something like those Brett Vaughn interviews with these old time drag ground lion hunters, or the guy, I can't remember, is his name Ollie Barney? Mm-hmm. The guy, no, maybe that's one of the guys he interviews. What's the name of the guy who did the first series that Brett got you access to and put out?
Are you talking about the Dale E tapes?
Not the Dale Lee tapes, but before Brett started doing his own interviews, he was first putting out
the ones with Bruce Kennedy.
Bruce Kennedy. Like, oh my God, man, that really got me into listening to podcasts and just the depths of those veins that he's tapping into. When you do an interview with a guy who's been hound hunting and sort of looking deeply at dogs and at nature for 70 years, it has the density of interviewing a professor.
Right. Or more sometimes.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. A good professor.
Yeah. That's the thing is you get into these and I'm like you, I enjoy our conversational podcasts. Like, I love having that, but you don't know how many times I get done with them. And it's like, you kind of put on your thinking cap. It just kind of naturally starts rolling. And you think, man, I would have liked to have dove into that farther. Or it sparks an interest and you kind of start researching on your own. And I'm like you, I would love to find the time to sit and read. I have a great library of hound books, dog books, hunting stuff over the years. But the problem is the time. So that's when we kind of started dabbling in the podcast thing. I wasn't even a podcast listener, really. I knew what they were, but it's just made it so much more accessible to the average working man, family man. We can all find time to usually listen to something, but not sit down and do the dive in research. So like that's where you come in, Kyle. You're doing the dive in for us, you know?
I think that sort of a lesson, like as if you were, sitting in class with a teacher and a back and forth question and answer, it's a more natural way to digest information. I don't think that our brains, especially a man's brain, is designed to sit and focus on text or dense text for 2 hours.
Sure.
We sort of drill ourselves into doing it, but we're more naturally able to sort of digest things and process information as we move, as we as we solve problems, physical problems.
Right.
Or that's me, and I think that seems to be many men.
No, I think you're dead on, because I can take, if you handed me the same content in text form, I guarantee you that I'm going to receive it better, audibly. I'm going to process it different, even if I'm busy doing something else, because it's like you're doing a duty at some point. It's like, okay, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to do this, where it's like almost I don't know, a conscious osmosis. Like you're awake and you're still soaking this all in while you're listening. And it's just really interesting because like you were talking about those old Bruce Kennedy tapes and the Dale Lee stuff and the knowledge that's behind those guys. I mean, I'll say Warner Glenn too. I mean, when I heard the podcast with Warner Glenn and now read the book, it's like it's pretty crazy. The knowledge that's in those guys' minds, and it's all right there, and they are happy to give it to a captive audience. Like nobody wants to waste someone's time, right? Like my biggest thing is, and I teach my kids this all the time, questions are intended to get answers. If you're not going to pay attention and be captive there, why ask the question? You know what I mean?
Yes.
So,
yes. Oh, definitely.
Like that's why I love the podcast thing. I know that people love certain episodes or they like certain hosts, and that's so great because everybody has their base listening group kind of. But this is so different because it touches on a lot of different things. I don't want to spill the beans too much, obviously, because we've got episodes that we're going to be launching. But, between dog training, biologists, outdoorsmen, I mean, you're hitting that fringe where everything's relative, but it's not like in your face. Yes, I expect this on the W Hunting Supply podcast.
Yeah, but I hope that these things are, I think that houndsmen are, we're more than just houndsmen and are engaged with many elements of the world. And I think I hope that it interests people. There's something that is the foundation of the podcast is sort of a depth of relation to place. And it's something that I find in the hound hunting community, and it really appeals to me. I'm born and raised in the UK. And so we've got American family and sort of some relation here, but I'm a bit of an amputee in that I don't have generations of knowledge of this nature and this place and a cultural history here. And houndsmen have built that to such an extent that when you go and listen to someone like Warner Glenn, you're stepping into a world of history and stories because we use stories to understand the world. And I think that to live in a world without stories as an amputee is a difficult and confusing thing.
Yeah. Yeah, it's one of those things where, and I feel this because I don't want to say I was born into a houndsman family. I've said this before, and I'm probably boring people with this, but I found out later on after I'd got into dogs that I did have family members. My great grandfather had hounds. My great uncle had hounds, but none of this was any knowledge of mine prior to, I was already neck deep in it kind of deal. But the people and the lifestyle and the culture around what we do, and I'm going to say as houndsmen, but in general, outdoorsmen, it's like the secret club that there are not many secrets once you're in it. Like people love talking about it and they love sharing experiences and they love sharing knowledge. They might not tell you where to go catch the biggest cat in the world. They might send you on a goose chase here and there. But it's one of those things where it's very inclusive. I mean, how do you feel about that?
I feel like 50% of guys who run dogs might not be houndsmen and they're worthless. not as people. And the other 50% are the best group of people I've ever met, and a group of people who seem to be consciously orientating their life with sort of old school values.
Sure.
And it's something that has really impressed me. And I try to sort of live a value driven life, and consciously, because I think that's important. And interacting with this group of people has really just added so much. And doing things in the old way, just like it sounds, maybe it's not the old way for some of the old timers on here, but like nowadays everything's email and text and blah blah. And I feel like you reach out to someone in the hound hunting community, and here's my phone number, like let's meet up, like
Oh
and
yeah.
that's how it goes. And it's I just really appreciate that way of doing things.
I laugh because my kids, it's funny because obviously my kids know what we're doing, like what I do for work, what I do with the dogs, but they're not involved at a beyond a certain level. Like right now in our lives, I want to keep the drive there and I want to keep them guessing and I give them little pieces here and there to keep them motivated and it's something to drive them in that direction. But when we started taking them to like the field trials, it was funny to me because they're like, Dad, how do you know we're going to the right place? I said, well, we just know. Well, who told you? They're very inquisitive. A child's mind,
Hmm.
like they need answers and they need answers that they can comprehend, right? Or they're going to keep asking the infamous question, why? Right?
Mhm.
So I'm telling them, like, it's kind of one of those deals where I don't want to say secret, but like it's a secret club, guys. Like we've had these events over the years. Like you get to know these people. Most, like you said, those old timers, you better pick up the phone and call them if you want to talk to them. Like you're not shooting emails to them. You're getting together, you're sitting around a campfire once a year, and that's the time that you get to catch up with them. And it's
Yeah,
something that can't be replaced.
no, no, totally. Which is wise because so many misunderstandings happen over the internet, and you
Sure.
distill something into text. I think that that's sort of the beauty of a podcast is it is let we have more words to and time and details of the voice to explain what we're talking about. So in these first few interviews I've been doing, uh, I I want to do them in person. I did the first one in person and the next two on Zoom, and I'm going to go do the next one in person. But it's just even on the phone, so much more is conveyed than if you distill it purely into text. And I think that that's in person is the best. But a lot of it seems like a lot of the conflict in the world is based on sort of uh, the abstraction of real world things, which are full of nuance, into the binary sides of the internet, and it's not a fruitful place to be.
No. No, and text it's so hard because it leaves so much for interpretation. There's certain things about us as humans that I feel like can't be conveyed any other way than face to face or hearing, I mean, to nerd out, it's like your influxes and your vocal tones and things like that. Like I can say something to someone, and we've all done this, right? I mean, somebody mistakes what you type, and all of a sudden it sets a tone in their brain, and it changes how they receive the message. And what kills me with that is it just puts up this mental block where they're not going to get certain things out of it. We're like when we're doing these podcasts, there's emotion involved in it. And I really enjoyed. I'm not going to say the names of the podcast yet because I don't want to like let people know the guests before they launch. But there's been a couple of them that I've heard from you now that it's like, man, there is just so much storytelling. There is so much passion behind it that you can't get from reading an article. Like these guys are living and breathing it, and they are real. I mean, that's just the layman's way to break it down, I guess.
Yeah, no,
I'm that guy.
totally.
Like sometimes you got to break it down for me, and I'll tell you, listening wise, I really enjoy it. I think you got some great guests going, and I love the idea behind it.
Yeah, thanks, man. I hope it turns into something, and I hope it's good. I hope people enjoy it.
Well, we're gonna find out. Trust me, you'll be the second one to know. I'll let you know how people
Yeah.
like it. But we
Well,
should probably
you
introduce it. I mean, the name of the
yeah.
podcast, we're going to launch it once a week, or sorry, once a month on Fridays, we're going to take one of the W spots and plug yours in, and it's to sit by the river, correct?
Yep, to sit by the river with guests. Uh, yeah, no, I hope that people like it, and it's been a privilege for me to get to reach out. You know, it's what a blessing. Like I'm reaching out to all of these people who I respect and admire so much, and I have a venue to talk to them. Like I think we all, secretly listen to our heroes and wish that we could meet them, and it's also people who I sometimes have different feelings than, but face to face or talking over the phone, we can begin to broach those sort of conflicts and difficult subjects. And I'd like to get into some of the difficult subjects in a productive way. Arguing, I don't think it's, I'll leave that for other people. I'm not an expert in anything, so I can't really argue about anything. All I can do is ask questions.
Yeah. Well, and it's conversation starters. I mean, that's the thing is, I mean, there can be different points of view, and I feel like just as society, the art of conversation has really been lost. I mean, you and I could be on polar opposite ends of, you know, let's say a dilemma, and it doesn't mean we can't have a conversation about it. But I feel like on the whole, like that's just something that's slowly slipping away. And it might not seem like much to some people, but as I grow and, since I became a father and a husband and, I'm growing as a person, it's one of those things where it's like Brett Vaughn, I mean, he pretty much nailed it. The Born 100 Years Too Late, right? Like it's catchy, but like there's meaning behind that. 100 years is not that long. When you think about perspective and you think about the old ways and the way things used to be, the way we did things, the way we treated people, the way we had conversations. Like if there aren't people out there that can still master the art of conversation, I mean, how long is it before as a society, like it's just communication breakdown? How else do you explain it?
Yeah, but I'm optimistic, man, and I think that regardless of what the facts say, the only choice is to choose optimism. And
Mm-hmm.
we look at the past and take all the good things that we want and work towards them in the present. But I like we're living in the good old days because we don't have any choice but to be right now.
Right? That's the truth. Well, I'm thinking now. Granted, I apologize if the timeline doesn't line up because we are recording this, and we're still kind of working out some details. I know for like your music and some of the editing stuff, but the goal is we're gonna have the first podcast of yours launch probably. I mean, if we can make it happen, I'd like to launch it either next week or on Black Friday. We'll have to see how things kind of work out. But it's I really want to encourage people to tune in. If you don't like listening to me and Buddy, like at least come listen to Kyle.
If only to throw tomatoes at me through the phone.
No, and Kyle, your last name is Dartnell, correct?
Yeah, Dartnell.
I knew I was probably going to butcher it, so I'm kind of surprised. But yeah, let's I mean, now that we've kind of introduced people into it, do you have any kind of social media set up now where people can contact you? Because that's probably one of the best parts of doing the podcast is getting the messages or getting, people interacting with you. Are there places that people can find you?
Yeah, I've got a Facebook. It doesn't have any sort of I just use it for hound stuff, so it's completely unpaid professional. Uh, and my name is Kyle Dartnell. Uh, I've You could just phone me, send me a letter, and I'll put my email and my Facebook stuff on, and I don't know my phone number. I might end up getting some weirdos, which could be interesting. But we can put that in the show notes somewhere.
Yeah, we can definitely do that. And we're going to be doing these once a month is what we're kind of working on right now. You've already got a better stockpile than I've got at the moment. I'm usually scrambling at the last minute and you're like on fire with it.
Yeah, I'm really passionate about it. It's an awesome opportunity. I'm I think the child's mind is a place I like to be, and questioning people, and this whole process of learning to hunt, learning to hound hunt, and these places. You're talking about the sort of breakdown of communication, but when I have a completely dissimilar background from I go hunting with this old cowboy, and he's just an awesome guy and been in the dogs his whole life. And we really probably don't have very much in our backgrounds in common. But there's no there's no breakdown in communication because we're both looking at the dogs, we're both looking at the sage. It's sort of a common language there.
Yeah. Well, what drove you to dogs? I mean, obviously it wasn't in your history. What was it that just drew you to it?
The same as everyone else, man. Just one of those people who likes dogs. No, it's just I've just always loved dogs, and it's provided me with a way to uh, interact with hunting in the environment through something that I already love.
Yeah.
It's been an adjustment for me because I came, not knowing, sort of as a pet owner, it's a whole new world when you get into working dogs, and it opens you up to the reality of their nature. I remember when I didn't know it is a sort of mindfulness that is hard to grasp from the outside, where like it's hard to imagine that a dog is not a human, although that sounds very obvious, that they are truly not uncomfortable when they're sleeping outside in the doghouse and it's 5 degrees outside. And that's a learning process. And I think that that's something I endeavor to spread to maybe a non-houndsman audience, if there's any listening here, is sort of being a bridge between the old dogman and the undecided listener.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. I mean, then that is like there is a bridge I feel like that does need built there. And it's an understanding that you can't have until you're immersed in it, right? Like once you're in it and you see it, like I use natural drive as an example. Like they say, "Oh, you make this dog go do this." No, no. Like those dogs are begging you to just let them go run around the woods when it's 15 degrees outside in the snow. That's what they want to do. That's where they are the happiest. And oddly enough, as we're freezing our butts off, getting snowed on, like that's probably where we're happiest also. Just being in the presence of an awesome working animal is something that you can't explain it in a way that people fully comprehend it unless they've experienced it and they just have the it factor. I mean, is how I call it. It factor. You either have it or you don't have it.
Yep. Yeah. Oh, definitely.
So what drove you to like take this to the step for the podcast?
Well, I felt like I have a interesting voice, not my actual voice, but I think that I come to things with a slightly unorthodox position in this community, and uh, and the desire to meet and talk. All the questions that I ask are questions that I just want to ask. And here, outside of the podcast, I'm sort of always looking for a way to understand the world, and it's something that maybe we've lost to some extent in that in the tribe we go to the elders for answers, and and not just elders but just the wise men and women for answers, and to provide a forum and ask the questions that stimulate them, because a lot of the time in our sort of commercialized world, questions can be shallow and like answering themselves, and I hopefully I don't want to ask questions to which I already know the answer.
Mm-hmm. No, and I picked that up. You're very engaging with the guests. You can tell it's 100% genuine. It is not just going through the motions. How much time have you been putting into prep work before you actually do the recording? I can tell you do prep work.
Oh,
A lot more than me.
I got Lyme disease a number of years ago, sort of the curse of being outdoors, and it has made my brain slower than it was beforehand. So I do as much prep as I can in order to be, prepared, so that if I'm foggy, I still have enough information to go on. But yeah, I think that to approach something seriously and with depth, the depth that these people deserve because they've devoted their lives to these things.
Yeah. Oh, I can tell you, man, I'm super excited. I know it's getting late your way, and I appreciate you jumping on with me real quick. And you said you weren't worth talking to. You're like everybody else I talk to. They say, oh, I don't know if I'd be good on a podcast. But what I'd like to do with you is now that we've kind of introduced everything, I'd like to get a couple of episodes out there and have you back on and we'll do kind of a recap and do some deep diving and talk about your plans going forward and just kind of engage you with our listeners. And I just really want to encourage everybody, we're going to try to keep this on a monthly rotation as far as, if it's going to be the third Friday of the month, we're going to try to keep it that way so that people can just tune in. I know people look forward to podcast launch day every week. So I just want to say, Kyle, I can't tell you how much I appreciate you reaching out to us because this is a great project that you've got going on. I've really enjoyed our conversations off air, and I look forward to lots more of them and having you back, bud.
Yeah, over a campfire.
Hey, yeah, apparently now you know where I live. Like you were in the general area. Next time you come out, I expect a phone call, not an email, a phone call.
I don't know. The sights I was seeing from I-5, I might just stay in Idaho.
Dude, I'll tell you, things keep getting much worse. I'm going to end up your way, maybe.
No, but seriously, man, thanks for having me on. And I reached out to W because I've just had amazing experiences with you guys. I love the podcast. And the emphasis on community, it's never seemed money hungry. The service commercially is insane. Like it's better than I want, actually. Like you guys need to take some more time in sending that stuff out there. I'm worried about your employees. Like they're far too efficient. But no, seriously, it's a great thing that you're building, and I appreciate you letting me be a part.
Oh man, we'll welcome you. When we started this, I'm sure I've told this before, but when we started the podcast, Buddy didn't know what a podcast was. The first one I sent him that I recorded with a friend of mine. But I had written a plan for the W Hunting Supply podcast. And it was, just a brief outline. It was, our target, what demographics were we looking at touching, the mission of the podcast, and it got tabled for a long time, like 3 years, I think. And then once everything kind of emerged and people started producing other podcasts, it was like, now's the time to revisit it. So Buddy came to me and I thought, okay, let's revisit this here. And I did the same thing without referencing what I had written 3 years ago, as far as demographics and the feel and what we were trying to accomplish. And I knew that he was dead on when he said, I think it's time. And I did that. And then I compared the notes. It was like, yeah, it still lines up. And that is community based. Like our customers, our listeners, our fellow houndsmen. I don't care what the differences are. Like this is a round table where we can all come together. We got coon hunters, we got coyote hunters, we got bear hunters, lion, fox. Like we're all from different walks. But that was the goal, was to have just this common meeting ground. And I think you're bringing a really cool piece to that, Kyle. And I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah. And dude, something I'm especially grateful for is all the people that I have met and I hope to meet. The world is a beautiful thing and that it keeps expanding. And I don't want to get stuck at the old men can have 400 years too late. But for those of us who are young, the world has to stay beautiful.
Oh, for sure, man. Well, we'll stay in touch. I'm going to get working on this. We've got Colby starting on some editing so we can hit the road with this. And we're hoping to have your first episode out here in the next couple of weeks. And I look forward to touching base with you.
Awesome. Thanks, Jason.
Hey, anytime, Kyle. Thanks for coming on.